It's no secret that I've recently become addicted to Stardew Valley, and since I'm still thoroughly enthralled in the honeymoon phase, I figured what better time could there be than now to compare each Twist Boy to a Stardew Valley NPC. So that's what we're doing today. Now, I've not played through the entirety of this charming little farm sim, nor am I completely knowledgeable about all of its characters, so if I end up missing something, please feel free to respectfully fill me in down in the comments below. Along the way, I'm going to be talking about story content from both games, so consider this your spoiler warning for Twist and Stardew. We're going to be starting with Crowley, because the more I learn about Mayor Lewis, the more these two have become synonymous in my mind. Do I think the mayor would be who Crowley likes best? No, but I also think there are too many similarities for this connection to be ignored. I also don't think Crowley would have the time to play Stardew either, given how busy he is with all the matters that he needs to attend to, including sending you home. Why, even suggesting that he'd be wasting time playing video games is tantamount to treason. Therefore, I think he'd be flattered by this comparison because he wouldn't know any better. And someone in charge of students being compared to someone in charge of a town is pretty understandable at that baseline. However, Mayor Lewis is a piece of work, building secret gold statues of himself, neglecting the town and its infrastructure, letting trash pile up on the beaches and infect the waterways, hiding away his paramour as if they both aren't consenting adults, as if it will ruin his reputation when he isn't even married. All hallmarks of an irresponsible leader. Crowley is also highly irresponsible. He allows the students to run amok in the name of character development, allows some of these children to face Overblot Riddle alone, and then each subsequent Overblot by themselves. Honestly, the most work I think we ever get to see him do is during Book 7 when he's trying to keep everyone alive in the face of Dragon Malleus, and even then, I truly believe in my heart of hearts it's because of peer pressure. Maybe he truly does have some sort of grand plan behind those thoughtless golden orbs, some sort of sinister scheme which requires all of this neglect. But I really don't want to give him the credit, same as I don't want Mayor Lewis taking any credit for my hard work and dedication getting this little town turned around. Plus, both are obsessed with money, wealth, and shiny things, so there's that too. Grimm is up next, and I think that he would be besties with Gus for one big reason. Food. Gus is the proud owner of the Stardrop Saloon, and he is also the town's resident gourmet, I think. At least that's my interpretation of him, since he's got a whole host of dishes at his disposal. He's kind, his name also starts with a G, and he serves food. What could be better for Grimm? The little dire beast is also someone who I don't envision actually playing the game for very long, asking you to progress on his behalf instead so that he can just enjoy the fun parts. So he's probably only familiar with a few select folks, including Gus. But I think the crux of this comparison comes in during the town fair, because during this event, Gus will give out free food, specifically the unlimited free food. This is Grimm's dream. The kid loves to eat as much as his bottomless pit of a stomach can handle, and then he loves to do it all over again 10 minutes later. I can see him spamming this interaction to get as much food as possible before getting hungry and asking you to get him burgers to eat. And then he can chow down on his own feast while continuing to spam this interaction. Essentially, Gus and Grimm are two sides of the same coin, the food provider and the food eater, and there couldn't be a better match than that, right? Next up, we have Hartslibble and their housewarden Riddle Rosehearts, who I think is quite similar to Penny. Riddle is another hard sell on this game, but I think if it was pitched in the right educational-leaning context by, say, Epel, he might give it a go and get addicted. Penny is the book-smart villager who takes it upon herself to educate the town's two young children, Vincent and Jess, and I think Riddle has a very similar quality. He is the reason his students aren't flunking out of school, after all, and he tutors most of them personally to ensure they pass their classes. Both of them also have an absentee father of sorts. I don't really know where Penny's dad is, if he exists at all, and Riddle's dad is completely absent from his memories in the game, novel, manga, and anime, so I think absentee is a safe enough description. While the two circumstances are wildly different, I think there is still a thread of having to take on responsibility a little too young that is shared between them, and I speculate their respective diligent attitudes might have been formed as a result of these upbringings. But since I've never explored Penny's character, the most concrete evidence I have for this comparison is their book smarts and tutoring capabilities. Trey is also getting compared to a character I know very little about, but I just cannot shake the feeling that their personalities are very similar, and that character is Harvey. They both wear glasses, they both have a greenish aesthetic, they both appear to be caring and sweet on the outside, and both I think might be a little too complacent with their positions. Harvey is the one who takes care of you when you pass out and is responsible for keeping the town healthy. Trey, similarly, is responsible for taking care of Hartstable and keeping peace within the dorm, tending to Riddle's temper and to his fellow dorm members' concerns. Trey is also weirdly obsessed with teeth and dentistry, which is technically a medical profession, so he's kind of already close to morphing into Harvey as we speak. Plus, this tooth thing can kind of be counted as a secret hobby, kinda, something that you have to get to know him a little bit better or be a part of his dorm to figure out. Harvey likes airplanes and other flying contraptions from what I understand, and while that is extremely tame by comparison, it's still kind of a surprising fact about him that I wouldn't have guessed just by looking at him, so that's the crux of this comparison. Ace is up next, and I think he'd get bored of this game pretty quickly, but I also think he's really similar to Sam. For the majority of Twist, Ace is a spunky, directionless teen, which, honestly, fair. But because of this, he comes across as a bit of a jerk with absolutely nothing to back up his smack talk. He's also got a ton of potential. He can pick up on things quickly, talk to just about anyone about just about anything, deflect with a baseline level of wit, and a few other positives, which makes it so frustrating when he wastes that potential throughout the story. This does make his eventual realization hit much harder in Book 7, and honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. But I do think similar principles apply to Sam. Our Goku stand-in is a skater boy and a gifted musician, but he doesn't really do anything with either of these talents until the player gets involved. He doesn't even choose his own musical style for his band, seemingly indifferent to his own passions. And with an overbearing mother, I can kind of see why, but it also reminds me of how Ace used to be. When you start advancing your friendship, you start to see Sam become more motivated, working on his talents and improving himself to the point where he books a gig in the city. Continue down that path and he'll even become a composer for TV. There's a nice progression from being somewhat directionless to having direction within both of these characters, and I think their generally upbeat attitudes also help to compare them. Both have spiky hair too, which I think is another boon for this comparison. Now, Deuce would absolutely have a chicken empire, and you cannot change my mind. This boy is building so many coops and investing in mayonnaise hard. When it comes to an NPC equivalent, though, my brain just kept coming up blank until I had the startling realization that Deuce would probably love Evelyn and would want to protect her at all costs. So that's who I'm going to give him. But while writing the script, I came up with a better comparison, a comparison to Kent. Now, Deuce is not married, nor is he a war veteran, but he is someone who is grappling with his past violence. This is not the same as Kent dealing with his PTSD, because going to war and being a naughty middle schooler are not comparable at all. The overlying thread of dealing with the consequences of one's actions, however, is kind of shared between the two. Admittedly, such generalizations would allow every character on the Twist cast to be compared to Kent in some way, so this is not perfect. But I had no idea what else to do for Deuce. So it's this or Evelyn being an absolutely adorable icon like Deuce, so take your pick. Kader was much easier to nail down though because he and Haley are BFFs. These two camera-snapping queens are gossiping about everyone in town and on campus. They are having sleepovers, they are fawning over Alex. It is a whole thing. I think both of them also come off as really shallow upon first glance, but they both hold a hidden depth that you need to work to see. Haley has a whole arc where she becomes less shallow and more considerate, whereas Kader puts on a smiley face for the sake of peace while hiding his innermost depths in order to not get hurt. Not perfectly aligned, but similar enough for my brain to put them together. Couple that with their love of photography, trends, and dedication to sibling drama, and we've got enough for me to confidently compare them. Plus, both of their parents travel around a bunch. Haley and Emily are taking care of the house while their folks are away, and Cater's folks move around a ton for work, so they could probably bond over those experiences too. Moving into Savannah Claw, we're going to start with their housewarden, Leona, who I think is a very Sebastian-esque person because they share one very important quality: bed rotting. Leona will sleep anywhere and everywhere at any time, which might be due to him being a lion beastman, but is also probably impacted by his deep and heavy emotions. Sebastian stays in bed for a very, very long time in the morning and is the Valley's resident emo kid who probably also grapples with very deep and heavy emotions. Now, I can already hear the chorus of angry typing about how Sebastian should be Idia instead because of the comics and the sci-fi novels and the gaming and the basement, to which I say, you're absolutely right. And valid. But who else was I going to compare Leona to? Jody, the depressed housewife who laments her wasted potential despite claiming she's content with the life she's built? Someone who spoiled her kids by not enforcing many rules until she has to, like a certain lazy lion is apt to do with his dorm members? Perhaps y'all have a point. I'll have to think about this one a little bit more. In the meantime, we've got Ruggie, who wouldn't waste too much time playing this game, but would absolutely love Linus if he did. Our rugged living off the land fellow and our scruffy living off the land hyena. What better match could there be? Both of them make do with what they have, foraging for food and materials, while taking whatever opportunities are afforded to them. The only true difference I can think of between them is that Linus is doing these sorts of things by choice, whereas Ruggie is doing them because he has to. Ruggie never had the luxury of being someone of status and rank. The closest he's ever been to that is now as Leona's lackey. He scrounges up whatever he can so that eventually he won't have to worry about what to eat and where to get it from. Linus is the complete opposite from what I understand. He once was someone at the top who could have had anything he wanted, or was at least of a decent enough status where he didn't have to worry, but at some point he felt so disconnected from life that he gave all that up to live solely off the land, relying on nature and others' generosity to an extent for survival. It's another coin situation where both are made from the same metal but are doing what they're doing for different reasons. Still, I think there's enough on the surface for these two to be compared comfortably, so I'm sticking with them here. Now, Jack is our resident jock, so he of course has to be paired up with Alex, the Valley's resident jock. I have my own personal gripes with Alex, but since Jack is a dude who's concerned with training and elevating himself to reach his highest potential, the two would probably get along well enough. Alex is a man's man, and he was built to be so, not because of the muscles and the football, but because he's just so gosh darn nice to the male farmer. It is a night and day experience. Jack is a little more cosmopolitan with how he treats people. It doesn't really matter who you are if you don't earn his respect, then you simply won't have it. Such is the way of Jack and his tsundere nature, but under all his gruff is a caring heart that is a bit more sensitive than his exterior would let on. Alex, I think, is similar in this regard because dude appears to be this happy-go-lucky kid on the outside, yet deep within there is trauma. He has to be strong not only for his own sake, but for his grandparents too, now that his mother is gone, especially since his father is literal trash. There is also an anxiety within him and his story about the future and whether he'll amount to anything, which I think can relate to Jack, albeit a bit more abstractly. Jack is training to be the very best so that he can be proud of his accomplishments. This is why he's so put off by Leona's actions in Book 2, because these underhanded tactics take away the validity of Jack's hard work and the rest of the team's, making the entirety of their victory worthless as a result. Jack's not going to stand for that, and Alex is doing his best to overcome his own demons to make something out of himself too. I think if Jack had the opportunity to become his training buddy, the two could really help each other out. And with that glimmer of hope in my heart, I'ma leave Savannah Claw and head to Octavanel. Starting off the dorm is Azul Aschengrado, our resident venture capitalist who absolutely has a spreadsheet upon spreadsheet open of game data to min-max the hell out of Stardew. Azul is a man of many talents and many jobs, so there's no way he's going to waste time saving his strawberries for year 2 like a certain other someone who may or may not be me. I also think he 100% runs JojaMart because he's an optimization king who doesn't have time to wait to complete the community center. However, he will absolutely unlock the minecarts before getting that membership to save himself money. Min, Max, Morris are the words that Azul lives by, so I'm comparing him to Morris, our slightly charismatic JojaMart manager who will make anything happen as long as you have the coin. Running small businesses out of town on a Tuesday? Iconic. Offering discounts to drive out your competition because you're so confident in your profit margins? Amazingly similar to Azul subtly bribing Epel to bring Vil to the lounge during his sleepwear vignette. The two have business, glasses, questionable morals, and hair swoops, so they're basically the same person, at least pre-Book 3. I think Azul's a little more reasonable post-Book 3, and I think Morris isn't all that terrible. He is just a dude working for a mega corporation, and we don't really know his motives for doing so. Therefore, I can't pass judgment on him too harshly, but I also cannot believe just how similar that these two's auras are. I can only hope that one day I too may min-max Morris. Jade, I think, would have a tea and mushroom empire. His entire farm would be mushroom logs and trees with tea saplings surrounding the perimeter, just as God intended. For this reason, I'm comparing him to Carolyn, because you need to befriend Carolyn in order to unlock the tea saplings. That's as deep as this one is getting, because I don't think there is anyone within the valley devious enough to properly compare to Jade. I don't really know what the deal is with Pierre, but he just seems like a less suave Morris, and that's not a Jade vibe. Pierre can't even effectively gaslight anyone, so how could I dare to compare him to the psychological nightmare that is Jade? I guess he's got a secret stash, but Carolyn used to take secret walks in the woods and has tea as an interest of hers, so she's got a few more points in my book and would probably interest Jade somewhat as a player. I can also totally see Jade installing that one mod that lets you marry Carolyn just so that he can force her and Pierre to divorce, but then go off to marry someone else. Just because, why not? So that little headcanon also played a role here. Floyd is last because I had no idea what to do with this guy for the longest time because I imagine he plays this game chaotically, perhaps even purposefully so to annoy Azul. The Octa Trio likely has a joint farm that Azul min-maxes, where Jade just farms mushrooms, and then Floyd spends all their hard-earned money on whatever he feels like, with his only contribution being a giant pumpkin that sits in the middle of his field. That is, until one day, he gets really into the game and outperforms Azul, but only for a brief moment, and then it's back to giant pumpkin. Perhaps he's into the game, perhaps not, perhaps he tries, maybe he doesn't, maybe it's just giant pumpkin, nothing else. I really do not know with him, and it's also why I don't know who to pair him with. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the game that would keep his interest for too long, and even if they did, it would still depend on Floyd's general interest in the game itself. There was never truly a one-to-one comparison for Floyd, so when it comes to Stardew, the only person I could think of that would have a chance is the mystery box guy, which now I'm pretty sure is just Mr. Key, but when I wrote the script, I didn't know if the mystery box guy was separate. So, mystery box version of Mr. Key is what Floyd is getting. But mystery boxes, on the whole, are such a Floyd vibe, so it's what I'm gonna go with. Did you get a carrot, a coal, a diamond? Whatever could be inside of these beautiful blue boxes. The world may never know, unless you go to Clint, but otherwise it's still a mystery. This gacha element feels very spontaneous and exciting, and those are the same feelings I get whenever Floyd gets up to his antics. I think he might even have a lot of fun cracking open geodes and mystery boxes to see what sort of prizes they have in store. So this is where I'm going to be leaving him for this consideration. Now, moving into Scarabia, first up is our capable Vice House Warden, Jamil, who resonates quite well with the wizard from Stardew. Jamil is a super smart guy who has a ton of knowledge that he unfortunately can't make good use of due to his position as Kalim's caretaker. But there is no denying that he has these skills. Plotting is his bread and butter, of course, with intricate designs on display in multiple different events and story beats. However, Jamil keeps himself in the shadows not only to accomplish this work, but also to keep his position secure. He's generally knowledgeable about a variety of different topics too, not just the arcane, even begrudgingly helping Azul with that one potion by leveraging his cooking experience. While he usually stays in the background, letting others enjoy the limelight, Jamil is just as capable, if not more, and in some instances, his ability to read the situation and apply the exact strategy necessary to accomplish his goals, whatever those may be, is almost mystical in its own right. The wizard in Stardew is a mysterious character who keeps to himself and largely stays out of the day-to-day lives of Pelican Town's residents. He has a whole host of arcane knowledge but only uses it when necessary, attempting to keep the balance of nature afloat instead of manipulating it to bend to his will. He can be found during specific events, hiding away from the crowd to observe but never interfere, though there are other instances where he must directly confront an issue to ensure smooth sailing for those he cares about. Jamil shares many of these qualities, although he is a bit more apt to take credit and puff out his chest, desiring recognition for his accomplishment, which makes this comparison not exactly perfect, but I still think it's decent, so it's who I'm going with here. Kalim is a ball of sunshine and willfully oblivious in most instances, which makes me think that if he was a Stardew Valley character, he would be Vincent. Every interaction I have with this child is positive, and while Kalim does understand more since he is older and he's not a child in the same way, the energy that these two have is infectious. No matter what they're saying or doing, they're just happy and delighted. Given how unawares Kalim is, he can feel more childish, especially during serious instances like Playful Land, where he cooks up a naive plan to resolve the conflict he's facing. Vincent is just a kid, oblivious to the horrors of the world and unable to understand the bigger picture. When his dad comes home and doesn't act the same because he's now a war veteran and has trauma, Vincent just doesn't get it. Even after Kalim is tossed aside by overblock Jamil, he doesn't really get that Jamil betrayed him. There's a lot more in-depth analysis with Kalim over why this is and how he operates due to his own trauma, because he's not dull, nor does he have the intellect of a young child. I'm not trying to infantilize him with this comparison. Kalim just chooses to see the good over the bad as a coping mechanism, so this isn't perfect, but to the outsider, Kalim does function in a very innocent, childlike way. So where Stardew is concerned, the only character I could think of that matched that vibe was Vincent, so that's who I'm leaving him with here. When it comes to Pomfiore and the dorm's house warden Vil, I can imagine him being likened to a couple different characters, but for the sake of our consideration today, I'm going with Willy, Let Me Cook. While these two are not at all aesthetically similar, their drive and passion to pursue their dreams is. Vil's main motivation throughout all of Twist is effort, putting in the work to get the results you want. He praises those who work hard for their dreams and scoffs at those who don't, because Vil cares much more about the attitude behind your actions than the end result specifically. Are you doing everything within your power to reach that goal? Have you thought things through? Are you certain that this is something worth achieving? And if all the answers to those questions are yes, then you're good to go in Vil's eyes. That doesn't mean you have nothing to improve on, but you are at least worthy of commentary. Willy, as far as I know, is the same way, just exclusively about fishing. Bro lives and breathes fish. He gives you the fishing rod in the hopes of keeping his passion alive within the town. He runs his store due to this love. He's even got a boat to bring you to new places where you can, among other things, fish. There is a drive within Willy to be the best fisherman, to ensure that others are taught the ways of the fisherman, and above all else, to never let his passion die out. It is within this realm that I think these two characters relate. A strong desire to achieve greatness in their respective spheres, and a positive acknowledgement of those who are doing the same. I imagine Vil would respect these aspects of Willy, and he himself has even fished before, rivaling Malleus in Vargas camp, which is a feat in and of itself, kinda sorta, given the context. Rook, our resonant artist and poet who I'm pairing with Elliot because the two wax words so well. Now, I think that he could also be compared to Leah, but because Elliot was my first choice of husband and I love him so dearly, even though he should have asked first, which is where he and Rook differ quite a bit, I think that they have too many similarities for me to deny them this comparison. Rook has ungodly amounts of charisma, which he wields well to offset the creepier aspects of his character, lower the guards of those around him with flowery language and general enthusiasm. Despite his outgoing nature and ability to wordsmith works of art on the fly, there is still a bit of softness and nuance in his actions. Rook is acutely aware of boundaries and does his best not to cross them, especially for those that he holds dear, like Vil. The huntsman can't hold in his love of life and exaltation of anything and everything he finds beautiful, offering words of wisdom during photo tutorials, amazing poems crafted in the blink of an eye in the Ghost Bride event, and even a passionate speech during Book 6 when he thinks of Vil's skincare routine. Elliot may not be as charismatic, nor is he as accepting of every version of beauty, but he does have a way with words and is a soul trying to find himself in the crashing of waves and gentle breezes of the valley. And I think that sort of energy matches Rook's vibe quite well. Epel, now, being our resident country boy, is also quite used to farming, and I think if he began playing this game, he might get suckered into the animal husbandry parts since he's already acutely aware of agriculture. I think he'd become quick friends with Marnie, who is also the NPC I think suits him best. If there's one thing you have to know about Epel, it is that he is all about apple farming. It is what his family has been doing for centuries, presumably, and is one of the factors contributing to his slow acceptance of his dorm placement. At one point, he even remarks that being in Palm Fury has given him a new perspective on plants that he's always been around, helping him uncover different uses and even experiment with new fertilizing techniques. Marnie seems to be the only character in vanilla Stardew that focuses on farming, since Pierre focuses on his shop despite selling seeds, and Shane doesn't technically get into chickens until his friendship is raised. She's also quite sweet, presumably takes care of her animals well, and gives off a wholesome vibe that suits Epel's dreams and motivations. Epel is also way spicier and more prone to conflicts than Marnie. However, I think the frustrating nature of her schedule could connect to this bit of Epel. After all, I'm sure there's quite a few Stardew players out there who have raged at getting to Marnie's a little late or forgetting which days she's active, especially in winter, and I think this collective rage can connect to Epel's scuffle-ready attitude even if it is tangential. Next up is Ignihide, and I'm starting with Ortho, who I think would purposefully not look up any guides or make any spreadsheets to try to give himself a more organic gaming experience up front, but subsequent runs would be min-maxed to hell and back. I also think he's similar to Maru, our tinkering engineering queen. Both are decently interested in celestial bodies and stars. Maru can be seen looking through her telescope from time to time, and Ortho literally blasted off into space during the star sending. Both are curious, and both are trying to figure out how things work. Maru in an engineering sense, and Ortho in an organic one. I've also heard that at some point Maru will ask for your help with an experiment which ends up shocking you, and for some reason that reminds me of Ortho's beam, so there's that, I suppose. I think the two could exchange a lot of knowledge and would spend a long time chitter-chattering about what makes them tick if they were to somehow meet. It'd also be a good time, and I think Ortho would be down to experiment a little bit, helping with the builds and running simulations and those sorts of things. Next up is our Game Master Idia, who I think would have his own min-maxing spreadsheet for this game that he tried to give to Azul, but the octopus did not trust Idia not to sabotage his farming adventures, so Azul politely declined. I like to think the two of them compare farm profits from time to time during Board Game Club, with Idia always having a leg up since he doesn't do much besides game that I'm aware of, versus Azul, who's got his fingers in all sorts of pots. Regardless, the character I think is best suited to Idia is Mr. Key. Like Ortho, Idia is also interested in galaxies far beyond, and Mr. Key, to my knowledge, is rumored to come from some such exotic locale. Both are also blue, so they got that going for them, and both are game masters of a sort. Idia constantly references video games throughout Twist, even calling himself the boss at one point and acting like a DM during Book 6, so I don't think it'd be too surprising for him to like Mr. Key on principle. After all, the dude's got his own clandestine organization of sorts, be hidden behind various quests, kind of like Styx. He provides excellent challenges for the player in the late game to test them, kind of like how Idia tests the Overblotties with various scenarios in Book 6. Mr. Key also seems to be somewhat aware of the game and its limitations, since he's the one who sets up all the chests in the mines, is the owner of the Skull Cavern and sets up the beasties and rewards within, and he stops you from using cheats to achieve perfection, suggesting a certain level of fourth wall awareness. Idia may not function exactly like this in Twist, but he does break the fourth wall from time to time, and in Book 7 he basically recreates Twist to trap and unravel Malleus' spell, reversing the power balance by preventing Malleus from using cheats. So all in all, I think these two are well suited. When it comes to Diasomnia and the House Warden Malleus, I think he'd be much more content to watch you play this game than do so himself. But I think as soon as you unlocks the sewers and meets a certain someone, the dragon might get more invested in the story. At least that would be my hope, because Krobus and Malleus are two peas in a pod to me. Krobus is a little guy who doesn't understand humanity but desperately wishes to, and Malleus is a slightly bigger guy who also does not understand humanity but desperately wishes to. And so I think the two would have a lovely time comparing notes over tea. It also helps quite a bit that the sewer aesthetic, for better or for worse, has Diasomnia's dorm colors baked right into it, and the sewers themselves could be considered a ruin of sorts. It's not like a lot of folks are going down there to admire the architecture, making it the perfect retreat for these non-human fellows. They could even decorate the space a bit more by installing a few gargoyles, perhaps? I don't think Malleus would spend too much time in the actual sewers, but I do see him being intrigued by this character. And I think if Krobus were real, we could slap one of those little dragon horn hats on him and he'd fit right in with the Diasomnia crew, no problem. There are also some more surface level comparisons between the two, both being non-human, both favoring the color black, both having these little ahoge-esque details, and most importantly, apparently, according to the wiki, because I have never once unlocked the sewers, Krobus hatched from something, presumably an egg. And you know who else hatched from an egg? Your Honor, I rest my case. Lilia is many things, so many things I often have a hard time narrowing a focus for these types of comparison videos. But if there is one thing I know about Lilia above all else, it's that he marches to the beat of his own drum. And for it, he shall be paired up with Emily. These two are delightful, but a bit spooky at the same time. You cannot convince me that they wouldn't get together to chat over tea, meditate, then curse their foes with the darkest of magics all on a random Tuesday. Emily's story involves a lot of metaphysical experiences from what I understand, and many of her preferred gifts are crystals. Lilia collects all sorts of stuff from all over the world, little bits and bobs, which probably also include crystals, but I also assume he's not one to turn down a metaphysical journey either. He seems like the type to try anything at least once and keeps an open mind, something that I think Emily does too. They've both got dyed hair, enjoy fashion as a hobby, have a carefree lifestyle, and otherwise just exude good vibes. Naturally, if you were to cross them, you'd see the darkness that was dwelling within the light, but as long as you're in good standing, then you have nothing at all to worry about. When it comes to Silver, though, I think of knights, brotherhood, and protection, which are also aspects I now associate with Abigail after reading a bit more of her story. Silver is an orphan who was raised to be strong, and this ended up manifesting in a martial sense given his adoptive father, Lilia's skill set. While not forced into the path of protection, I do think it's something Silver holds in high regard and is an aspect of his character that informs several things, like his reluctance to give up on those he cares about even though they may not be using their powers appropriately. In Book 7, we get to see him play a pivotal role not only in the dream hopping but the eventual conquering of Malleus, and despite everything that he's gone through, he still holds on to hope in the very last moment. He hopes for peace, for understanding, and I think in this way he resonates well with Abigail. From what I understand, Abigail is interested in swordsmanship, often sneaking out to practice this art since her parents, mostly Pierre, disapprove of such actions for archaic reasons. As far as I'm aware, her motivations are fueled by curiosity, but also duty. There is a part of her, I think, that wants to be cool, sure, but another part that wants to protect, and I think this ties nicely into Silver's own motivations. The two may or may not have biological parents outside of their family units as well, which is yet another tie, and this supposed lineage may also have something to do with their hair color, so as far as I'm concerned, they match up pretty well. Last but not least is Sebek, who is a staunch defender of Malleus and the more defense-focused of the two youngsters, even getting himself a swanky shield in Book 7. Due to his role as protector and his stubborn positioning as a royal guardsman, I can only think to compare him to Marlin, our monster-flaying guild master. Now, Marlin doesn't have too many characteristics from what I know because he isn't someone you can interact with in the same way as the other characters. He serves a practical function for players, but not too much else outside of that. However, he is positioned as a martial defender of the valley, a monster slayer who works tirelessly to control the harmful critter population, and he seems to be deeply connected to his organization. Sebek wants nothing more than to be recognized as an official royal guardsman of the Briar Valley, to serve his Lord Malleus for all of his days, and to protect his liege and people both. His unique magic was formed out of this desire. He staunchly stands by his lord no matter the circumstances, and in Book 7, when he realizes this dream, partially, rather than become complacent, he's energized to try even harder. I think these aspects of Sebek work quite well to tie him to Marlin, who functions in a similar vein. I also like to think that Sebek would make it a point to get every single monster slaying goal before doing much else if he were to play Stardew, just to prove how good he can be in combat, even video game combat, so there's that as well. Now that each boy has a copy of this game and has been assigned an NPC, all we can do is sit back and watch the co-op chaos unfold. Naturally, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on my picks and any differing opinions you may have. If you liked this video and want more content like it, please let me know that too, but if comments aren't your thing, you could always like and subscribe instead. And before you go, I'd just like to remind you that you're amazing and I hope you have a wonderful day.